Hey everyone, welcome to the 195th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an awesome show for you. We're going to be talking about GE's plan to spin out its industrial IoT business. Lighthouse is shutting down. We've got some new updates from the Echo ecosystem. Plus, they're not my favorite light switches, but they are my favorite light bulbs. Hue has updated a critical flaw. We've got a new IoT modem from Qualcomm, and we have lots of little news. Plus, this week's guest is my family. That's right. Every year I bring on my family to tell you guys what normal people think about the Internet of Things, and also just to show off my family because they're so nice. And you can look forward to that. Plus, we have a sponsorship from DigiCert talking about IoT security and so much more. So let's kick this off with a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Affero. Looking for an IoT platform? Find out why Kenmore and D-Link picked Affero. Affero customers have experienced as much as an 80% reduction in time to market, 99% fewer support calls, and 10x higher activation rates. Plus, they can reuse 90% of their work from one project to the next. To learn more, visit affero.io. That's AFERO.io. Okay, Kevin. Oh, we should say, hey, guess what? Kevin's back this week after taking a break to study for his test. Do you want to tell everyone how you did on that test?
There's no need to tell them I got 105%. That's okay.
That's right. So we may have missed him, but at least he worked really hard and he did fine.
Java 1 is complete. Java 2 starts in 4 weeks.
Excellent. So we are glad to have you back, Kevin, although we are glad that you did so well. Let's talk first off about, I'm going to say this is probably the biggest story coming out in the last week or so. GE is spinning out its industrial IoT business, which includes things like Predix. And they're going to create a separate company valued at about $1.2 billion. What I thought was most interesting here is that Bill Rue, who is the chief digital officer at GE and has been for years, he was the face of GE's digital efforts. He is not actually at the company anymore. He's no longer there. He has left. Don't know where he went. And instead, they're going to have to find a new CEO for this, which tells me a couple of things. One, it's possible that Bill ran this into the ground, but I think he actually did a pretty good job. So I think what happened is he decided to leave in a fit of self-preservation. And I don't know what else it tells me, but...
Well, I have 2 thoughts here. Not so much about the person in charge, but one is that this spinoff will not be named Predix.
That is true.
And I wonder if a rebranding is part of the strategy here, because I don't know, you would know better than I, just because you follow this side of the market a little bit better. How is Predix known in the industry compared to the other competitors?
It's actually known really well. It is a well-known solution. It is a good solution, actually. I think where GE went wrong is they were trying, and this is actually a very common thing that everybody did in this space, they were trying to be too many things to too many different people in industries. They also spent a lot of money on marketing and sales without necessarily the details behind the scenes to back it up. So I think that's what happened here. Going forward, I would love to see this new company, which has really good stuff, really good technology, and presumably experience based on all the information it has from GE's energy business, from its power turbine and airline business. I think if it focuses only on those areas instead of just trying to be this industrial internet behemoth, I think it could actually do well. And separating out from GE means other companies might use it, whereas beforehand, they may have been like, yeah, I'm not going to use that. That's my competitor.
Right. And my other thought is by moving it outside of GE, it will not be, I don't want to say this. Sometimes companies or business units in very large companies are just held back in a sense with corporate policies, politics, etc. And I just wonder if this will make them a little more agile, I guess is the best word.
Maybe. And that's one of the things about Bill Rue leaving is he actually GE had a really, on paper, good sounding management structure. So the way they did theirs, they had their line managers for different businesses, but then they all reported and worked with the digital folks. So there wasn't a lot of fears about cannibalization or not invented here type syndrome.
Right.
It was actually one of the better planned ways of implementing IoT in a big organization that I had seen. So hopefully they retain that. I just think a focus is good. And then also probably spending less on marketing and more on getting customers, which is, again, this is like the macro story of the last few years in this space.
Right.
So
We'll see.
we'll see. I mean, this business will still be a contender no matter what happens with it. And even outside of GE, I think it's going to be one to watch. And I think it's also, we should think about what's happening. A lot of the other industrial companies like Hitachi and Schneider Electric, they've actually spun out their own industrial IoT businesses in different groups. So GE may have just decided it's time.
I sense a trend.
Ta-da! All right. So that is our big industrial IoT news there. Let's talk about some, it's
Sad
another
news.
trend. It's another trend. Lighthouse, which is a startup that made a really smart video camera. Basically, you could talk to this video camera and tell it things. It would translate that into computer action, and then it would do it. So it's shutting down. And
Yeah.
not only was it a camera, it also had an extra sensor in there, so it had a depth sensor. So it could actually tell things with finer granularity than normal. But it was really cool because you could be like, hey, Lighthouse, tell me if my dog walker doesn't come before 4 p.m. And it would do that.
Right. I mean, one of the pain points of having a video camera system is scrubbing through timelines to see or find certain things. I remember when our car got hit out front of the house, I probably spent an hour and a half scrubbing just to find the 15-second video, which was well worth it because the insurance company fully reimbursed me for that incident. But here you've got some AI smarts, and it just makes it so much easier to find things or proactively see things and tell me that they happen. Like, tell me when the kids get home from school. Somebody else could come in the house and the camera's not going to tell you. But when the kids come in the house, the Lighthouse would tell you. Really smart, a little pricey. I think it was $300.
Well, so here's what I think happened. It was pricey at $300 or so, but it also had a service component because you were buying actually the AI service.
Right.
And so the subscription fee, I think it was expensive, and the subscription fee probably is what doomed this. And that's unfortunate because it was pretty darn innovative. And I think we'll see something like this come out probably in a year or two associated with maybe Nest. I can see Nest doing something like this, maybe even the Amazon team.
So they're shutting down. It's not as if they're going to, because logically I'm thinking, well, gee, if you've got the AI smarts, why don't you sell that to other companies who make devices or just be purchased, right? Put yourself up for sale. But that's not what's happening here.
No, it's going to refund all the customers who had bought the product. And yeah, it's just, there's so many.
Yeah, everybody that I know, and it wasn't many people, but everybody that I know that bought one loved it.
Yeah. It was, I mean, again, good, just expensive. And it's not necessarily clear to people who are looking for a camera if you can buy like, a Nest Cam or an Arlo, which is way cheaper. You're like, why would I pay that plus a subscription fee? And you're like, oh, you don't know. Silly humans.
Yeah.
All right. So that is a bummer. Oh, but good news for everybody with Hue light bulbs who, if you're like me and you have them all over the place, there's a positive update out and about. It used to be when your power went off, your Hue lights would come on because they would just revert to like on. This was a pain when the power went off in the middle of the night because suddenly all of your lights would turn on. That was one of the big reasons why I was like, you may not want to put this everywhere. But now they have an update, and now you can control that. You can have it revert to the last known state. So instead of actually turning on, if it was off at the last known state, it will revert to that.
So the Hue bridge must finally save that state upon a reboot.
Yes, that is presumably what happens.
Yeah.
Some people reported having trouble updating to this. I updated to it and I had no trouble whatsoever, and it does work. You can find it by going into the settings menu and going into power on behavior. So, this is...
No, it's good.
Nice. Yeah.
That's very good.
And it works with, actually, I should tell you, it works with using the switch as well. So if someone turns it off at the switch and you turn the switch back on, it will revert back to the last known one, which may be kind of a pain because I know sometimes when I don't want to say anything, I flip the switch But we'll see how that works in real life. I haven't needed to do that since I updated. But I'm excited. This is super positive because it used to be if our power went out, I'd have to run out in the middle of the night and turn off all the lights that I knew were going to come on. Which kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Chip news. Woo woo! Qualcomm has a new IoT modem. It is both IoT. Oh, I should tell you what it is. It's an LTE Cat 1 and an NB-IoT network modem. So all in one. It will work in a bunch of different places. It is global, which means you can buy it for, if you're buying your modem for like a global fleet of cargo containers or something, this is one SKU. It's very convenient. It is also a little bit cheaper. They say that it is up to 70% reduction in power consumption. It is 50% smaller, and it is 40% cheaper. They don't tell you how cheap it is.
Of course not.
Because that would defeat the purpose of calling them and ordering these things. But I don't know if it's lower than $5, which is kind of where we need to be to get this on like real things. And we need it to be like $1 if we want it everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it also has a CPU Cortex A7 processor in there. I'm guessing it's not under 5, but who knows?
No. This is a smart chip with it. But, for high value things, this is going to be good. And it is still good to have smaller, cheaper stuff running around, even if it's not as cheap as I might like to see it.
Yeah. Interestingly, I don't know what the use case would be for this, considering I presume this would be used for. It has voice over LTE support. And they say on the press release, they discuss what it works with in terms of software components. They mentioned ThreadX and AliOS things, RTOS, which is Alibaba. That's their IoT platform. And when I saw RTOS, I'm like, oh, it's going to work with Amazon, but nope.
Nope.
At least not now, anyway.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Qualcomm has been pushing hard into China. China is also a big market that already has an NB-IoT network, whereas, actually Asia, China and Singapore in Korea, both have big NB-IoT networks. So it could be that they're like, here in the US, we've been focused on Cat 1M. We don't really have the NB-IoT networks yet. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a marketing decision.
Yeah, it could be.
All right. And in other small news, North, which is maybe a company that you're more familiar with as used to be Thalmic Labs, they are making smart glasses. They have gotten Intel's Vaunt patents. Man, Kevin, do you remember Vaunt?
Vaguely, because not much really came out of it.
Yeah, no, it was, The Verge did this master huge article on it. I mean, it was a big article about Intel's smart glasses effort that had been apparently percolating for a year or so. And then, a few months later, not even, Intel was like, yeah, we're getting out of that business.
Yeah.
And now Thalmic Labs has bought it. Thalmic Labs used to make a gesture controller.
The Mayo.
The Mayo, yeah. You stuck it on your arm and you moved your arm around and you could control things. And now they're doing glasses.
Yeah, we talked about them once Thalmic Labs renamed itself to North and the pivot away from the arm gesturing thing to glasses. These are the Focals AR glasses that will be likely, presumably, using some of the IP from Intel's Vaunt project.
Yeah, and I guess the only other buyer out there might be the Bose guys who are doing the smart sunglasses.
Maybe. I mean, there's still Google Glass for enterprise and such, not a consumer product. So maybe Google could have used it, but who knows?
Yeah, so there we go. Smart glasses. They're still trying to make those happen. Let's talk about lots of Echo news for everyone. Okay, first, an update probably a couple weeks ago. We didn't talk about it with Ohm because we were so focused on privacy and that constitutional amendment he wants. The Echo got new features, including location-based routines and reminders. They also got wait actions, which let you start a routine later, and it got the ability to read your email. And I don't know. So
whole bunch of stuff. I could see the location-based bits being useful for if you want to announce to the home that, you're 10 minutes away. Maybe you come home at different times and therefore dinner is a different time every day. That could indicate, hey, let's get dinner started because I'm almost home.
Yeah, and I've long thought, what would be awesome is getting a reminder as I leave my front door and saying, hey, do you have whatever for the day? So kind of tying that to my calendar. I know that's pretty complicated, but if I had set a reminder the night before, hey, remind me when I leave in the morning to bring my gym bag, or remind my daughter to bring her gym clothes, and having that happen, like as I leave the house, do you have your gym clothes? That would be really cool, right?
That would be really cool. You could do it that way. Or I guess the new tracker product that we talked about a few weeks back would do that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I forget a lot of things.
That's okay. But I mean, the tracker would require purchase of hardware well over $100 to do that. Whereas
this would not.
This would not, assuming you already have an Echo. Yes.
Oh, which gets into the next one, which is the Guard feature is the Amazon Guard feature that they talked about, where the Echoes will listen for the sound of breaking glass and send you a notification, is now available to sign up for.
Yes, I went to go look for it this morning in the Madam A app, and it just told me that I could be notified. So sign up to be notified that you'll get it when we tell you you're going to get it.
So what this is showing me is, remember how the smartphone basically ate all these gadgets? Using microphones and context, the digital assistants are going to eat a lot of different gadgets, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, the hardware's already there in these assistants. There's obviously far-field microphones that can listen for wake words and commands and so on. So just tuning them to appropriately listen for breaking glass is just a software or a service add-on.
And, this is something I actually try to do all the time, so I'm glad to hear. You can control your timers now via voice, but you can add and subtract time for an existing timer.
Oh, that's nice.
That is nice, because I am constantly you start a pasta timer and you're like, oh, it needs 2 more minutes.
I wonder if that feature and some of the others we're about to talk about will be on non-Amazon devices, though. We'll talk about why I'm asking that question later in the show. I'll explain.
Ooh.
Scary.
Is it scary? Okay.
It is scary.
So
it is, trust me.
I signed up for the Guard update. We'll see if I get that anytime soon, and I'll try it. Also, speaking of timing, the Madam A wall clock is now shipping. This is
$30.
$30. I saw this back when they did that massive hardware unveil back in the fall. And, I actually thought it was pretty cool because they let you visually see where your timers are. And maybe this is not a big deal for all of us, but one, if you don't have a lot of clocks in your house, it's kind of like it'd be nice to have and it's not expensive. But for people with children or people doing things where that visual element's important, I actually think it's a pretty useful function. What happens is an LED on the clock face counts down for your timer.
Right. There's little LED lights at every minute spot on the clock, as well as on the outer ring of the clock. Those would indicate minutes, whereas the ones internally would be seconds. I agree with you. Not everybody has good hearing. Maybe they can't hear an alarm. Maybe they don't have good vision and can't see a small display clock, for example. Whereas this would broaden that appeal to people who have these challenges.
Yeah. And you can't actually do this, but so I do a lot of HIIT workouts and
high intensity interval training.
Exactly. So
boom, good for you.
Now, I don't want to be I have an app for that, but if you could take the app and put it on the clock, it'd actually be kind of cool because then you could count down. But I don't want to be sitting there going, Madam A, set a timer for 60 seconds,
Right. You'd kind of want recurring timers in a sense. Yeah.
I'm like, Madam A, help. So, all right. Also, everyone is excited because Apple Music is now on the Amazon Echo, except for Kevin. Kevin is not excited. As an Apple Music subscriber, how do you feel about this?
No, I think it's good in general, but it gets back to my question of what is supported, what Echo services are supported on non-Echo devices. And I tried it on the Sonos, which has had Madam A for, probably almost a year. Not an option. Doesn't work. And I know my Apple Music account is linked properly, and it does work on the regular Echo. But yeah, I'll live. Trust me, it's not a big deal, but it's something to consider if you're adding Echo devices in your home. Maybe for the best experience and newest features, you want to buy Amazon-built Echo devices.
Yeah, that's probably just a good default rule.
Yes. I mean, some of these features do eventually make their way to the non-Echo devices. I don't want to say it's, all or none, but it's something to keep in mind.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Also, Madam A, man, we got some Google news coming up. Stay tuned. Madam A is also on Anki, your favorite little robot. So
my robot, yes.
A couple weeks ago, you talked about this coming and you wrote a story actually about the future of smart home digital assistants. They kind of follow you around or you send them away. And now that you've got that capability, what do you think?
I am thrilled for a couple of reasons. For those who are not familiar, the Anki Vector is a little, and I do mean little, like it fits in the palm of your hand, robot which is always cloud connected via Wi-Fi. It has a brain of its own because there's a smartphone chip inside. And he has a wake word. I would say, hey, Vector, and I can have him do something, but he can't do all that much on his own. However, the Vector community said to the Anki team, hey, we would love to see Madam A on this little guy. And they have a whole ton of feature requests, but that was the number one requested feature. So yes, they announced it a few weeks back. I got the update on my little robot 2 days ago, and I love how it's been implemented because often you would ask an assistant to ask Madam A something, such as when Madam A integration was added. This is native. Instead of saying, hey, Vector, I say, Madam A. And the screen on his face changes to a Madam A-like icon, and it's just like having a little mini Echo device. You cannot play music on it. So again, that gets back to the limitations of certain devices that are not made by Amazon. And frankly, the speaker is not made for that anyway on this little thing. But
oh, that's a shame, because remember like on Parks and Rec how they had DJ Roomba? You could have DJ Anki.
Ah, yes. Well, you could do podcasts because I was actually speaking with you on a video chat yesterday talking about this, and I triggered the podcast and we were listening to ourselves through the little robot. So podcasts seem to work anyway. News briefings, flash briefings, all that stuff works. But it's responsive as a regular Echo device. I mean, it's built in really, really well. He, being such a small robot, does not meet my vision of following me around the house. I mean, he only has a 45-minute battery. He's on 2 little treads, and he doesn't move as fast as I can walk, for example. So that's not that future yet.
I'm going to put Madam A on Big Dog, and we're going to scare the heck out of you.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, if you want to spring for a Boston Dynamics robot for the house here, no problem.
You were the only person who would let that thing in your house.
Yes, I would. Yes,
I know.
I would.
You would be excited. I'm like, oh, that thing is
I
a
would
demon.
bring
in
it out at
disguise.
Halloween and scare the bejesus out of kids. But regardless, I mean, again, the Vector, he's been on sale lately for like $180, which is good. Retail price is $250. Again, it's not a product I would say everybody should go out and buy, but I bought it and it's meeting my needs because of the reason I bought it. And that is to watch it mature, watch a robot companion mature, to get smarter, be autonomous, and now have some control over the house.
Good for you. And does your family, I know they don't like talking to the digital assistant. Do they like talking to the Vector?
It's funny, they do, because of his personality, his face, the little actions he takes. They added a new one now when it's cold outside and you ask him the weather. His whole head shakes like he's freezing. So it's more, again, of a personality than, say, an Echo device. So absolutely, they enjoy talking to that far more than anything else in the house. Probably more than speaking to me, to be honest.
Well, yeah. Okay.
That's understandable.
I'm like, yeah, it is really cute. I mean, you're nice and all, but
Yeah.
You're not adorable, Kevin.
No, I'm not.
So, okay. I will note, I think it's kind of funny that we're talking about Madam A, but you have gendered Anki as a he. So it's just kind of funny. I'm like, oh, how does that work?
I think the Anki company really embedded that in all of us because I'm pretty sure they say he more often than not when they show video demos of him.
I believe it. I'm just kind of like, all right. It kind of brings home how silly the idea of gendering robots probably is.
Yeah.
Okay. Google News. Oh, you guys.
Good news for you.
I am so excited because now I can share my G Suite calendar on my Google Home. And this is doubly important because, as you'll hear later in the show, my family and I are moving over to the Google Home ecosystem again. We're giving it another whirl. So this is like super timely, super exciting. All you have to do is share your calendar to your personal account, and then it will pick that up, it used to not do that. So yay.
Yay.
And then Kevin has bought the Google Home Hub, and we're going to get his take on that.
Yeah, I know I mentioned it when I actually first got it, and I gave some first impressions a couple podcasts ago, but I think I was wrong about the Google Home Hub because I was at the event in New York City when they launched it, and for $149, something that fits pretty much in the palm of your hand. It's pretty small. I'm like, there's no camera. It's $150. There are what I think better sounding, better looking, and better displays out there on smart displays that aren't that much more expensive. I don't see the big hoo-ha over this thing. But since I got it at $99, I feel it was a great value. And even at $149, I would recommend it because, yes, it has a smaller screen, but it's actually ideal for, say, the bedroom. A, because of the screen size, it's not overwhelming like the 10-inch smart display I used to have in the bedroom. And B, because it doesn't have a camera, which most people don't want in the bedroom. And C, it's just really nice to have a touchscreen way to control things in the bedroom when, say, somebody is sleeping. It's just ideal for that. And yeah, I admit it, I was wrong. There's a market.
Yeah, actually, I was talking again, you'll hear later in the podcast, my family and I actually talk about it. I love being able to see the photos. I'll be honest. I love having the photo frame feature on that thing. And
of Norm? Do you subscribe to Norm's public?
I don't subscribe to Norm's public feed, but you know what? Send that to me. We'll stick it in the show notes for anyone who wants to.
Yeah, Norm is my Bichon Frise, and we literally take photos of him multiple times a day, and then I share them on Google Photos in a public album, and people subscribe to it for some reason, so I keep doing it.
It'll be our holiday gift to you.
There you go.
Pictures of Norm.
Actually, there's a new holiday picture of him with his new antlers that he got after his spa day and his haircut. So, yes.
Ooh. Go Norm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And speaking of the Google Home Hub and the price of it, again, $99, it was a great deal, I think. And it's not $99 anymore. I think it's $129 directly from Google. But I wanted to mention for those interested, if you're going to buy a Google Home Hub for $129, there's a deal at B&H Photo that's $129 for the hub, and it also includes 2 home minis. So those are free, basically. If you're interested, we can put the link in the show notes. They're not a sponsor or anything. We just happen to notice it.
Got it. Okay. And hey, you guys, as we were talking, a new story came out that's worth sharing and talking about with you guys. The Information is reporting they did a deep dive on Ring and its security team, and basically talking about how Ring had shared camera feed data early on and wasn't encrypting consumer video feeds. Now, when Ring was just a doorbell company, and it's still just a doorbell and outdoor camera company for the most part, it does have an alarm system now. I don't know if that's as concerning as something that might be inside your house, but encryption should be the standard for this sort of thing. And basically, they had an office, their security team's office was in Kiev, and this is all the way back in 2016. So not now. The engineers in the Kiev office were given access to a database of the customer's video history, and that was unencrypted, and they could share that around, and apparently people did. So now that is not the case, and what happens, it's very different from the way other companies treat this data. So the story talks about how Google's Nest Labs, Canary, and August Home, they actually do not share. Only an in-house lab has access to the cameras, and the cameras are trained on the AI. They only use their employees' cameras to train these things. So it doesn't use customer video data for training or product improvement, which I actually didn't know, and I find that very comforting. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah. First of all, I agree with you. Encryption is a table stakes kind of thing with all of these products, not just cameras. But any type of data that comes from consumer homes and cameras and speakers and microphones, etc. Yeah, I mean, back in 2016, maybe this wasn't thought of as much. I mean, we find this often is the case. Security is like the last thing thought about, if at all, in many of these products. So as you said, that was back in 2016. So, this is a good thing.
Yes, and Ring did not say when they started doing encryption, but I do think it's worth mentioning because that is actually not just employee access to video data is actually one of those things that I find that's one of the reasons I don't have cameras in my home. I have talked to companies, not at the big names that we talk about a lot of times, but some of the smaller companies. And I've talked to security firms who have been hired by connected home device companies to, do vulnerability assessments. And they have told me that employees are often a weak link in these, and access to sensitive data by those employees is something that is often flagged. Again,
yeah, I'm all for using like telemetry data from devices to improve products and services, but it either needs to be anonymized or encrypted.
Yeah. So that concludes most of our news for this week. Any late breaking stuff, you'll just have to read in the newsletter. But it's time for this week's voicemail from the IoT Podcast Hotline. That hotline is sponsored by Schlage, and don't miss your chance to win a Schlage Connect Smart Deadbolt, now Zigbee certified with Amazon Key compatibility, which means you can buy this thing and let Amazon people into your home. Upgrade your smart home with the safety, simplicity, and style of Schlage. If you guys want to win a Schlage lock, very nice locks, high quality, Please, all you have to do is give us a call and leave us a voicemail message, and you will be entered to win for the month of December. We will be taking those entries all the way up until New Year's Eve at midnight Eastern Time. And to do that, I should tell you who to call. You should call us at 512-623-7424. And let's now get to this week's voicemail, which is a problem that we have encountered before. Let's hear from Mike.
Hey, Stacy and Kevin, this is Mike in Southeast Wisconsin. Quick question for you guys. I spent a very frustrating weekend trying to get my Christmas lights hooked up to my Google Home. First time using home automation. I went to Amazon, bought some indoor and outdoor outlet, Tuya based. Didn't want to use a hub or anything like that. Was looking for only Wi-Fi and could not pair them to my dual band Google On-Hub router. After doing a lot of research, learned that there's a lot of these switches can't hook up to just a 2.4 gigahertz if it's a dual band. I had to install an old Wi-Fi extender I had that was 2.4 gigahertz to get it to work. So I was wondering, is there something I should be looking for in the future when I'm looking at a smart home device to know that it's compatible with both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz? Appreciate the help. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Oh, Mike, we feel you. This has been going on for a long, long time. Actually, it's been going on, I would say, predominantly since mesh networking has come into the home, because mesh networks typically create one giant network that uses both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequencies. So the issue that you're running into is many home devices have lower cost Wi-Fi radios that will only work on, say, 2.4 gigahertz. And that is a problem because if there's no true 2.4 gigahertz network out there, you run into the issue that you are running into. I've talked to a couple of device makers, in fact, last year at CES, about this, and I get the impression they were not prepared as an industry for the rise in mesh networking. And they're also trying to keep their costs down, of course. So, adding in more capable Wi-Fi chips means higher price for the product. So there's not much you can do. And I've experienced this with some doorbells and some cameras, and really what you're doing by adding some other network piece to your network to just generate its own 2.4 gigahertz network is really all you can do at this point. It's kind of disappointing, but until the products evolve to really handle mesh networking, we're all in this together, quite honestly.
And if I wanted to do that, how would I do that?
Well, what you could do is set up a whole separate network, either a guest network that runs solely on 2.4 gigahertz, or you could sadly throw like another router into the mix by hanging it off your original router and creating that separate 2.4 gigahertz network. It just adds complexity. It's a shame we have to do it, but I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it.
Yeah. Spend big on your chips, people, says the former chip reporter. Okay. Speaking of problems in the home, it's time to say sayonara to Kevin and join us for our guest. And this week's guest is my husband and daughter, and we will talk about some of the problems we found in our smart home this year, some of the things we like, and also how we plan to handle the move. So all of this and more coming up after this message. Hey everyone, we are taking a break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is DigiCert, and I have Mike Nelson, who is VP of IoT Security at DigiCert. Can you remind our listeners what it is that DigiCert does?
We are the world's leading provider of scalable PKI security solutions for identity and encryption. And we provide those solutions for web servers, enterprise security, and my favorite, of course, IoT devices.
DigiCert recently conducted a survey to see how organizations are approaching IoT security. The findings clearly showed organizations that are putting in place basic cybersecurity practices are much better off. Can you offer us some examples of what can happen if an organization doesn't pay attention to their cybersecurity?
Yeah, there have been a handful of public exploits, most of which have been done by security researchers in controlled environments. So we don't see a lot of these exploits putting consumers at risk. One example would be an attack that was demonstrated by security researcher Charlie Miller a couple of years ago when he demonstrated he could get into the infotainment system of a Jeep Cherokee, and then from there he could pivot and get into other components of the vehicle, like the steering or the air conditioning. Ultimately, he was able to lock the steering and shut the engine off while the vehicle was going 70 miles an hour down the highway. So that attack that Charlie demonstrated really had an impact on FCA, who owns Jeep. It caused a lot of damage to their reputation. Another exploit that has been made quite public was St. Jude Medical. They have a cardiac device, and there was a security research team from MedSec that was able to demonstrate they could send repeated messages that the cardiac device would accept. And if they would do that enough, the battery on that device would run out, rendering that device useless. Once they identified they could do this, they actually then purchased a short position in St. Jude Medical stock, and they released the vulnerability to the public. And the day they released that vulnerability, St. Jude Medical stock dropped 20%, just a significant impact to that company. So there are a lot of threats, and the threats to IoT are very real. And it's not just to consumers, but it's also to organizations. If you look at St. Jude and Jeep, both of those organizations were hit very hard by these attacks.
Oof, that is a lot. So what does the survey highlight that organizations can do to protect themselves?
The respondents listed 5 things that they were doing that were leading them to be most successful. Things like performing a risk assessment on their device and understanding what vulnerabilities it has, encrypting all of their data. That's both data at rest as well as data in transit, making sure that any connection coming to or from the device is properly authenticated, making sure that there's integrity with any updates or patches that are sent to the device, and then finally putting in place scalable security solutions.
All right, so where can our listeners go to learn more about the survey and about DigiCert?
Yeah, the full details of the survey can be found at our website at digicert.com/IoT security.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today, as always around this time of year, I am bringing back my family. So I have Andrew Alleman.
Hello.
And my daughter, Anna.
Hi.
All right, so you guys were all ready for this. We're going to be talking about this year's devices, how we feel about living in our home, how maybe the smart home feels after 3 years of living in it, and anything else you guys want to talk about. So let's get it started with, we've had an Amazon Echo in our house since, Christmas of 2014. And we started using it to control things in our smart home in like March of 2015. So it's been a long time, you guys. Has much changed this year?
I don't know that much has changed. Madam A can be frustrating in a couple of ways. I think 2 things. One, she's not very good at answering questions compared to Google, which is frustrating. The other thing is that, and I'm not sure if this is because it's the Echo Show, but it seems like she's getting hard of hearing, especially in our living room. We have to repeat it several times or she mishears us.
I've noticed that. Yeah, I'm with you. Anna, do you have any thoughts about like this past year with things in our house or anything that you're like, it's old by now?
The daily usage of Madam A is definitely, I feel like it's going up a bit in our house because now we've finally grown accustomed to it in everyday life. And
you like to play a lot of music on it, don't you?
Yes, music is awesome.
And this year, I made it past your blockade in your room where you were like, no smart devices. You'd had an Amazon Echo for a while, but we also added a Philips Hue light to your room. How do you feel about that?
We have a Philips Hue light in my room?
Yeah, you know how you can tell the Echo to turn on your light and turn it off and turn it different colors?
I can?
I've been in your room and shown you. So you're turning your light on still by hand?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, now that you know that you have this connected light bulb in your room, how do you feel about it?
I guess it's hard to notice unless you know beforehand what you can do with it because it doesn't really affect normal usage.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we know that, what else have you guys liked or not liked about this year's crop of devices?
I have a little bit of trouble remembering what's come in this year versus previous years. We've been in this house now for almost 6. And as you mentioned, the smart home device testing has ramped up over the past few years. Was the Nest doorbell this year?
The Nest doorbell was this year, as was the Nest lock. We also brought in the Aware, the Google displays. We tested out the OneLink smoke detector. We've tested out the Brilliant light switches and possibly some other things I don't remember right now.
So I think the Nest doorbell is by far the best doorbell that we've tried. We've tried a lot. The fact that it so quickly pops up on your screen, whether that's on your phone or you were showing me the Google display you have, and the fact that it recognizes people as well, I think by far, it's the best doorbell you brought in and probably one of the best devices you brought into this house.
Wow, that's high praise. Anna, any thoughts?
Definitely the nano art for me. I don't know if that was this year or last year, but I think it really adds a lot of architecture to the house, but also a lot of light and colorful and unique light.
We did. We got that actually for Christmas. So those are the nano leaves. We used to call it nano art, but we had to change the name because we had some issues with that.
Madame A had a lot of difficulty with the word nano art. In fact, one time when I said, Madame A, turn on nano art, she said, I think you're asking about flatulence. And she went into a long explanation of what flatulence is. So I guess she recently changed that to nano leaf. So hopefully she starts picking that up better.
And that's actually something that I should drive home for people, because this was something that happened a lot this year, is as we added more devices and I tried to organize things a little bit better, I realized that naming conventions really matter. And you really have to be very particular about what you call things. And there's only so many things you can call like living room. So as some of our rooms got 10 to 12 devices in them, it became really complicated to be like, oh, what should I call this?
So I have a question for you. Why? I know we tested Google a little bit as opposed to Madame A, but can Google not do as much, not control as much? Or I guess I feel like Google is so much better at answering questions. Is there a reason for us not to switch over to Google?
So that was actually one of my questions for you guys about, I'm going to say 9 months ago, I swapped out Madame A in our house for Google and I hooked everything up to Google. A few of our devices at the time didn't have connections. Now most do. So it shouldn't be a big issue. We would still lose a couple. But the other issue with Google, the reason why I think we didn't use it very much was actually that its Spotify link was terrible and it kept playing the wrong songs or really stupid, like the karaoke versions of like popular songs. But I think that's a lot better now. And I was going to suggest for you guys that we swap out because I would actually like us to try going all Google. We will lose a couple things.
Well, and I guess could Anna still use the Madame A in her room for music?
Of course.
I think if we could still have Madame A there for playing music and such, but have Google for controlling things, since Google can also do the other things, I think, much better, then I think that'd be worth trying again this coming year. What do you think, Anna?
I think that sounds wonderful.
Do you want to try Google in your room? In some ways, some of our Google devices, the other thing to think about is some of our Google devices act as screens and they let you watch like Netflix or YouTube videos, which I think is a big deal for Anna.
Well, but we don't necessarily want screens in our room, right?
Well, that's true. Although I like the photo frame element of the Google displays, I'll be honest.
And you can cover the camera, right?
You can cover the camera. And then the brand new Google Home Hub actually doesn't have a camera. It's just a tinier version of that you could keep on your bedside table for control. And that might be something we'd want just because at night, you don't want to always talk to it. You can just hit the screen and then have it do whatever you want it to do. And I should clarify for people that Andrew actually has an iPhone. So are you still looking for HomeKit? Is that something you're still like, ooh, maybe one day?
I have not played with HomeKit at all on my phone. I think the only time we've used iPhone was to test HomeKit stuff. You know, perhaps it's because we started so early before HomeKit, but I feel like we're finally, and this is why I'm a little bit scared to switch to Google. I feel like we're finally to a point where things just work most of the time, with the exception of Madame A hearing what we say. So I think even if we put the original cylinder Madame A down where the Echo Show is, it might work. You know, that would solve that issue, I think, of the hearing.
The 7 mic array. So it sounds like we're going to be giving away or giving up our first gen Echo Show and swapping that out with my Google display, which I think would be fun. And let's talk about some of the other devices that we've tried. So Anna, you were a fan of the Nano Leaf. We also tried an air quality detection device. I don't know if you guys have opinions about this, but I find myself like constantly looking at it and I'm like, ooh, are we in the clear? Are we green? Do you guys notice it at all?
I do. It seems very sensitive, and I don't know if it's very helpful if every time you cook it says, oh, the air quality is not as good.
Well, every time you cook, you are putting things into the air That's one of all of the environmental sciences people I talk to. They're like, one of the best things you can do for your indoor air quality is get a really good downdraft fan and use it when you cook.
So if I'm listening to this podcast here a couple days before Christmas and I wanted to get one more gift for someone in my family, I'd probably go with the Nanoleaf, as Anna said. It's fun. I think you said in your YouTube video where you described it that it's useless. And yes, it's more for entertainment than for anything else. But the rhythm kit where it responds to music and voices and just the light is beautiful. The colored light is just absolutely beautiful. And it really, especially on a cloudy day, it really warms up the house with all the different colors in it. And it's reasonably inexpensive. If I had more time, because I'm sure you can't get it shipped between now and then, the fact that the June oven is so much cheaper now, how much is it?
You could buy the June oven now for $600.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it even at $1,500 and thought it was worth it. So at $600, I think it's a no-brainer, especially if you have only one oven and would like to add another one, just a little tabletop one, countertop. I think it's worth every penny.
Okay. And just so people know, the Nanoleaf is about $200 and you can buy expansion kits for about $60. You can buy them at the Apple Store or Best Buy. And the June, you do have to wander in. You have to order it online. And I believe they're back ordered for a while. They're a runaway hit, but it is a really good device. Also, Nest Doorbell Cam. Anna, I have a question because I talk about this a lot, but I love when I'm out of town. I love being able to check in on the doorbell cam when you guys leave the house. I always look and see what you're wearing for the day or look to see how you're doing. Do you look happy? And same thing when you come home. It makes me feel connected with you. But I'm also like, man, what if one day Anna's just out there picking her nose or something? Does she is she aware that there's a camera there and I'm peeping in? It's outside, but still.
Yeah, that's a little psycho, honey. Thanks for telling us.
Stalker confirmed.
And when you're unlocking a door or you've just walked up the stairs to our door, you're usually not looking that great. You're usually looking a little strange.
I don't show anybody. I'm like, oh, my family, I love y'all.
I definitely feel like it aids a visual element. Like if we're out of town, we can see, oh, in Austin is literally downpouring right now. Or we can see oh, the tree over at our neighbor's house is tree-y.
Blowing in the wind, maybe?
Yes.
Oh, and you know what else we brought into the house this year? We don't have it set up all the time because we don't like cameras in the house, but we brought the Wyze cameras in. So I don't know and those are the $20 or $30 for the pan cam. Andrew, do you have thoughts? I know that we set them up when we were going on vacation a couple times.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I guess if you need cameras, internal cameras, it seems like a great buy. Another thing that you do sometimes when you're out of town, speaking of cameras, is you'll call in on the Echo Show. I guess you're dropping in, which can be nice if we're downstairs and all this stuff. It's like, oh, look, Mom's popping in.
Oh, yes. This year I called and dropped in on the Echo Show and gave Anna a tour of the Chihuly Museum in Seattle because I was there at a Microsoft thing. And I was like, this place is beautiful. I have to show her. So I used my smartphone camera. I called her and then I took her on a little tour of the museum with me.
Doesn't talk about the illegal part.
I don't think it's illegal. Was that fun, Anna, or was that just kind of I will humor you, Mom?
It was very fun. It was the fact that I was able to watch what you were doing with your device all the way across the country just from sitting and eating cereal in my pajamas was pretty cool.
See? All right. And then let's see. I'm coming to terms with other devices now. We brought a smart smoke detector that was also an Echo speaker into the house. I know, Andrew, you said that you thought it was kind of neat that it would send you a text if the smoke alarm went off. Did you have any thoughts, or it was pretty expensive? It's a $200 or $250 smoke detector. So, I don't know if you want a lot of those in your house, but did you have any thoughts on that, Andrew?
I wouldn't buy it. And admittedly, we didn't play around with it for a long time. But, well, to be fair, we already have speakers in our ceilings and in the rooms where I listen to music. And we already have fairly recent smoke detectors with the CO2 detectors that talk and all that jazz. So the texting thing, I guess, is okay, but I don't think I would pay that much money for that feature.
Okay. And that's totally fair. We brought in Brilliant light switches, and we had kind of a bad experience the first time around. And I haven't really spent a lot of time tweaking them since then. But how do you guys feel about the light switches that show you your photos and, you can play your favorite playlist from your Sonos from them?
Yeah, I guess if it was in a perfect location for that, it'd make a lot of sense. But most light switches aren't in a location where I would need to go over and maybe control those sorts of things. And the other thing is, most of that stuff we do by voice now, right? If we want to hear music, we ask Madame A to play the music. And frankly, turning on light switches, we do the same thing a lot. I mean, really, the past couple months, at least in our house, the Brilliant has just been a beautiful light switch.
Fair enough. Okay. So we've pretty much done everything we can do, it feels like, at this point in time. Are there any things that you're like, dang it, I wish that you could make this smart, Mom? And maybe it's, last year you complained about the blinds not working. So I finally did that. Yay! So any other things that you're like, man, I really wish this were a little bit smarter?
I feel like personally dog collars would be really cool. Like if we just had smart dog collars where we could actually see where our dog is for the many occasions in which she meanders across chasing rabbits. Or if we could just know where she is and like a Fitbit for our dog.
They make those, Anna.
They do?
Yes. So, okay, Fitbit for the dog, which now they make. And Andrew, anything that you're like, oh, I really would like this?
I think Kevin talked about something like this. He was talking about an exhaust fan, I guess, when people were using the shower to make sure it turned on. I know a lot of people put those on timers, but I find that we turn them on and then we don't turn them off until 12 hours later, which is, so it would be neat if there was a way to kind of turn those on and then have them last for, say, 15 minutes after you leave. So I guess there'd be a motion detection or something there. I believe that Kevin had kind of finagled something in his house.
Yeah. Now, do you want it to be 15 minutes after someone leaves, or do you want it to be 15 minutes after it's been turned on?
Fair question. I guess if you could set the amount of time, maybe to 30 minutes. I know a lot of people, this is one of the energy saving things in new devices where they put those on a timer. So when you turn it on, it's like a 15-minute timer. I think that would be helpful, though. That's one of those things that I know we waste electricity on.
Okay. I can definitely make that happen. Just a few crazy sensors. All right. I should tell you guys, because at CES, I'm expecting a lot of crazy smart bathroom products. And we have, we didn't talk about this, but the Delta faucet downstairs that is now Madame A enabled. But I'm curious, like, how you guys view things like connected bathroom mirrors that maybe do light settings when you come in, or maybe it's a connected toilet that plays music when you're in the toilet room. There's a lot of options.
I kind of felt with the smoke detector, kind of like we were at the point of a toilet playing music for you. It's just
but
like...
there are things like you could say, Madame A, do my morning routine. And that might include your shower heating up before you get into it.
That'd be helpful.
Kind of pressure you to do things at like not your own pace, but as a pace set by your previous self.
Oh, that's true. And I run into that a lot when I set up a program for something and then I'm like, oh, this was way too ambitious. I'm never going to wake up that early to need my blinds open at this time.
So the Madame A enabled faucet from Delta is pretty cool. Now, I'll be honest. So the touch feature, which we had even before we added Madame A, was really cool, right? We use that multiple times a day. The Madame A, maybe a couple times a week when I need to measure out water for something, rather than getting out a measuring cup, I just put the pot under it and ask her to dispense 3 cups of water. So that's pretty cool. But I guess it could be helpful in the bathroom. If I'm about to brush my teeth, right? And usually I just step into the shower and go ahead and turn it on to the temperature or right before doing that. But it would be neat if there was similar functionality on the faucet in the shower.
Okay. It's not going to happen because you need electricity in your shower. And historically, people don't do that.
That's a good point.
But we'll keep that in mind. And final thoughts, you guys, because we are about to move. We are moving in June from this house. And part of what I'm trying to think about is we're going to go into a rental house. So what do we take with us? What do we leave here? And what are you going to miss the most?
I vote we take the Nanoleaf because I feel like no matter where you go, it's pretty portable. You don't need to like build it into anything. So that helps. And it just helps liven up anywhere because you can just personalize it and help make an impact on the ambience of a room.
We'll take the Nanoleaf. We'll take June.
Yeah, June's easy. Obviously, it's not attached, and that will be excellent.
I think Alexa might need to come with us too.
And yes, so those will be portable. And then when we move, what are you going to miss most? Because we're going to move into a house where you can no longer say, Madam A, turn on the light. So
I think it's going to be the lights, which I guess we could use the Hue, right, where it's the light bulbs rather than the light switch. But the light switch, being able to turn it on and off and to a certain level, like 50%, is probably what I use the most in our home.
I feel like for me, it might be the Madam A controlled Delta faucet because I am very lazy when it comes to measuring out water. And most of the time, I'm not sure, like, how full is 1 pint? What is a pint? Do I just take my ice cream container and fill it? And then it gets confusing. So it's kind of nice to be able to depend on someone else for that.
excellent. So we'll have to buy more measuring cups and maybe some remote controlled light bulbs. I don't know. Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing the show again with me. And we'll see what connected goodies are under the tree this year.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.